please welcome to the stage, Kyle Reyes.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you. I'm going down there. I hate being up here.
Yeah, you do your thing. I wander around, baby.
All right, first of all, Arizona, you guys have some really cool belt buckles. I am a huge fan of those. So I came out here. I'm from the People's Republic of Connecticut, in case you guys didn't know that. I got taxed on the way out of the state. I'm sure I'll be taxed on the way back into the state. And today's speaking engagement is a little bit different from what I normally do. I want to make this a really interactive engagement. I brought along some videos. I've got a good friend of mine, Josh, who saved my butt on the technology side of things. He's a special agent. I'm apparently not allowed to tell you what agency he's with because we're recording. But, you know, what I want the takeaway today to be is that this is an event to honor law enforcement, right? But we have much bigger problems here in America. What I've learned over the last couple of days, being out here, taking a private tour of the border, meeting some incredible sheriffs, incredible people, is that Tucson is just sort of a microcosm of a much bigger problem that we have in America. It is the epicenter of everything that is going on, of so many of the controversies that we see with everything from undocumented migrants, is what we're being forced to say, right? All the way to sex trafficking, drugs. I mean, you guys have a lot of problems out here, but your problems are the problems of all of America. And that's a little bit about what I want to talk about today. So I've got Josh is going to bring up some slides for you. I want to start, who here, show of hands? First of all, I love the Make America Great Again hats. That makes me so happy. You don't see a lot of those in Connecticut. I fly with, let me tell you how I fly. I fly wearing my Make America Great Again hat, and I've got a gym tank top that says God, Guns, and Trump on it. And I tend to fly Southwest, and usually one of two things happens. Either A, I have an empty seat next to me for the entire flight, or B, I'm sitting with a friend, right? Because they see that hat, and either they walk right by or they sit next to you. So either way, I win. Art Del Cueto, show of hands, who knows who I'm talking about here? Did you guys know that Art wears Crocs? True story. Art wears camo Crocs. And man, I was breaking his spine over that for the last couple of days, and he was a little embarrassed about that. He said, you better not tell anybody about that. And I said, Art, I'm telling everybody about that. Because I asked Art, I said, Art, what do you guys need? Right? As Border Patrol agents, what do you need? And he said, we need our stories told, man. Because the media is portraying us in such a negative, aggressive light. We just want those stories told. And so Art's a dude who wears Crocs, and he likes Burt Reynolds, and he likes cheap Coors Light beer, and he is a man who loves his God and his country. And that is just about every single person in this room. Not necessarily a man who loves their God and their country, but incredible patriots. I want to tell you about a guy, Marlon. So, National Police Week takes place once a year in May in Washington, D.C. And we work very closely with an incredible organization called Concerns of Police Survivors. And Sherry, if you could just stand up for me for a second. Sherry's a very dear friend of mine. She's a survivor. And Sherry is one of the incredible people who helps shepherd fellow survivors through the journey of losing their officer. So we've worked with Concerns of Police Survivors for quite some time, and we got off that plane and we had so many logistics to worry about, right? I had to get my camera crews out there. We had events and meetings, and I sat down and I sort of forgot to prepare myself mentally for what I was coming into. And an hour after our plane touched down, I sat down with a husband and wife, their daughter, and their granddaughter, who was 5 years old. And they told me about their son, who was killed in the line of duty. And that 5-year-old girl told me through tears, I just wish that I could tell my uncle I love him one more time. Listen, I'm a Christian conservative patriot first. I'm a husband, I'm a father of 3 beautiful little girls, going to be 5, going to be 3, going to be 6 months old. Looking at that child and seeing what was taken away from her because we have failed to uphold law and order in America, because we have failed to respect our law enforcement officers, made me sick to my stomach. And I want to tell you about Marlon. So Marlon was this officer's dad. And Marlon really threw me for a loop, because I could tell right away that Marlon wasn't okay. He wasn't in a good spot. He had recently lost his son. And I said, Marlon, can you tell me a little bit about your officer? So he started telling me about his son, and he said, listen. He goes, I said, Marlon, how are you doing? He goes, this was all God. I said, listen, as a brother in faith, I'm with you, but we're filming this, and there are going to be a lot of people who have a hard time understanding, who can't see how this is the hand of God. So I said, can you tell me a little bit about that? And Marlon goes, yeah, my family isn't very well off. We don't have a lot of money, and we lived about 9 hours away from my son, and we hadn't seen our son in years. No problems in the family, just money. When you live in rural America and you don't have a lot of money, 9 hours can be a showstopper. And he said, we hadn't seen our son in years, and then a few weeks before my son was killed in the line of duty, our house burned to the ground. I said, you got to be kidding me. He goes, oh yeah, no, Kyle, that was God. So, Marlon, yeah, I got you, but you walk me through this journey, brother. He said, well, insurance hadn't kicked in yet, so we're staying in temporary housing. And while we're over in that temporary housing, I get bit by a brown recluse spider. I said, you got to be kidding me. He said, oh, Kyle, stop. That was God. I said, okay, Marlon, listen, keep walking me down this road, brother. He said, well, my leg, these spider bites, they're not good, man. He goes, and it's basically like a flesh-eating bacteria. And I was going to lose my leg. And I'm sitting there, just my mouth is open. And he said, oh, that's God. Okay, Marlon, keep it going, brother. He said, the hospital couldn't take care of me. So they said they were going to have to send me to another hospital. You know where that other hospital was? 15 minutes away from his son. 3 days before his son was killed in the line of duty, his wife and Marlon got to spend an entire day with their son for the last time. That was God. These things don't happen by accident. That's Marlon's story. Over the next 4 days, I kept running into Marlon. There are 50,000 people who go to Police Week. I kept running into Marlon again and again, just at that moment where Marlon looked like he needed a brother. And to hold that man and cry with him and pray with him was an important reminder of why we do what we do at law enforcement today. I could go on and spend an entire day with you guys. I could tell you about my friend Susan Moody, who Susan is a survivor as well. She had to go home one day and tell her 1- and 3-year-old daughters that daddy was never coming home. I could tell you about all of my friends who are in law enforcement who have been shot. Houston, good friend of mine from Texas, took a 12-gauge shotgun blast to the face, survived to tell about it, got an opportunity after his shooter was convicted, was given 5 minutes to sit across from that shooter and have a conversation with him. And I said, Houston, there's a good chance I might have killed the guy. He said, Kyle, God. He goes, I sat there and I looked that man in the face and I said, there's a forgiveness in this room that only one being can give, and it's not you or I, it's God. Again and again and again, I've been blessed to hear these stories. And what's even more devastating in so many ways is that so many of these officers who have been shot or stabbed or run over in the line of duty, communities get together, right? The police chief comes out there and he says, Texas strong, hold the line, we stand behind you, we love you, brother, we're there for you. And then 3 days later, the media coverage dies off. And then 3 weeks later, all of a sudden, they're alone. They have their husband or their wife, maybe their kids there. The media's gone. The camaraderie is gone. The department's moved on. Now you're a little bit of a black sheep. It's uncomfortable. What do you say to that person? Benefits haven't kicked in yet. You can't work overtime. As a police officer in most communities, you're not exactly making a killing. So now how do you provide for your family? Now you're in pain. And pain meds start being taken away. And we are losing more and more incredible men and women to their own hand because we say, stay strong, we stand behind you. And we don't. We forget about them. We have a lot of problems, but today I don't want to just talk about problems. I want to talk about what's happening in America at scale. I want to talk about our guns. I want to talk about our babies. I want to talk about our faith. I want to talk about our businesses. I want to talk about our Constitution. First, I want to show you guys another video. This was what we produced right before Police Week.
Our kids had a play date together after preschool.
We chatted in line at the grocery store.
I sit behind you at church on Sundays.
I crushed you in fantasy football.
I'm your neighbor.
I'm a hockey coach. Sometimes I'm in uniform.
Sometimes I'm in a police car.
Sometimes I'm struggling with things I've seen.
Sometimes I'm saying goodbye.
Sometimes I'm working in schools.
Sometimes I'm saving lives. But I am always watching. We are the sheepdog.
We are always among you.
We are always vigilant.
We are always on guard.
We mourn the loss of our brothers and sisters.
We stand beside their survivors.
This National Police Week, we reaffirm our pledge they will never be forgotten.
That we will always protect.
Always defend.
Because we are
The thin blue line.
God
bless America.
$164 total line of duty deaths last year. $85 total line of duty deaths so far this year.
I'd like to think I saved a few good lives, but I couldn't save them all. This is my last
2018, 167 officers took their own lives.
I'd like to think I saved a few good lives, but I couldn't save
So far in 2019, 141 have taken their own lives. I need you to feel that. I need you to be angry. I need you to remember fathers, wives, sons, daughters. Next slide. Today I want to talk a little bit about God, guns, police in America. Because at the end of today's presentation, I want you to walk away a little upset. I want you to walk away a little bit angry. Because we've forgotten what those emotions are. We forgot how to fight. We have done a lousy job as conservatives at standing up and declaring enough is enough. I want to talk to you about the state of policing in 2019. I want to talk about why you should actually give a damn. I want to talk about the existential threat that we face to democracy and how we're going to continue to fight back. Paul Harvey, show of hands, who knows what I'm talking about? If I were the devil, if I were the prince of darkness, I'd want to engulf the whole world in darkness. And I'd have 1/3 of its real estate and 4/5 of its population. But I wouldn't be happy until I had seized the ripest apple on the tree, thee. So I'd set about however necessary to take over the United States. I'd subvert the churches first. I'd begin with a campaign of whispers. With the wisdom of a serpent, I would whisper to you as I whispered to Eve, do as you please. To the young, I would whisper that the Bible is a myth. I would convince them that man created God instead of the other way around. I would confide that what's bad is good and what's good is square. And the old I would teach to pray after me, Our Father who art in Washington. And then I get organized. I'd educate authors in how to make lore literature exciting so that anything else would appear dull and uninteresting. I'd threaten TV with dirtier movies and vice versa. I'd peddle narcotics to whom I could. I'd sell alcohol to ladies and gentlemen of distinction. I'd tranquilize the rest with pills. If I were the devil, I'd soon have families at war with themselves, churches at war with themselves, and nations at war with themselves, until each in its own turn was consumed. And with promises of higher ratings, I'd have mesmerizing media fanning the flames. If I were the devil, I would encourage schools to refine young intellects, but neglect to discipline emotions. Just let those run wild, until before you knew it, you'd have to have drug-sniffing dogs and metal detectors at every schoolhouse door. Within a decade, I'd have prisons overflowing. I'd have judges promoting pornography. Soon I could evict God from the courthouse, then from the schoolhouse, and then from the House of Congress. And in his own churches, I would substitute psychology for religion and deity science. I would lure priests and pastors into misusing boys and girls and church money. If I were the devil, I'd make the symbols of Easter an egg and the symbol of Christmas a bottle. If I were the devil, I'd take from those and who have, and give to those who want it, until I killed the incentive of the ambitious. And what do you bet? I could get whole states to promote gambling as a way to get rich. I would caution against extremes in hard work and patriotism and moral conduct. I would convince the young that marriage is old-fashioned, that swinging is more fun, that what you see on the TV is the way to be, and thus I could undress you in public and could lure you into bed with diseases for which there is no cure. In other words, if I were the devil, I'd just keep right on doing what he's doing. Paul Harvey, good day. That's scary, guys. That was more than 50 years ago. And that's where we are today. So I should probably give you guys a little bit of background, aside from that 10-page long bio that was read about me. I think I paid somebody to write that. So like I said, I'm a Christian conservative millennial. I want to give you a sort of an important backstory. So when I was growing up, we were judgmental. We were taught how to judge. Not black versus white, Hispanic, Mexican, Asian, anything like that. We judged you on whether or not you were a good person or a bad person. And somehow today that's considered racism, right? If you make a judgment that someone's a bad person, immediately the left reaches into their sleeve and pulls out sexist, racist, Islamophobic, homophobic, you name it. The cards are all on the table. So yeah, I mean, we judged, but it was, are you a good person or are you a bad person? Now, I think it's important, if I'm going to humanize everybody else, I should probably humanize myself a little bit. I went to Catholic school growing up, and I was super fat, like real porker, and all-you-could-eat buffet was a real good celebration for us. And I'll never forget, in second grade, we lived in New Jersey, and in second grade, I had Sister Gertrude. And I was running late for school, and my mom was yelling at me, "You're going to miss the bus, you're going to miss the bus." And I remembered I had show and tell that day. That was my day for show and tell. And I wish I could tell you that I knew in that moment what I was thinking. I don't really have any memories of this. But I grab something, I shove it in my pencil case, I get to school, and Sister Gertrude's going around the class, and she's about 400 years old. She's like Ruth Ginsburg, but Sister Gertrude was actually still alive, you know? Not propped up like Weekend at Bernie's. So Sister Gertrude says, "Kyle, it's your turn. What did you bring for show and tell?" And I unzip my pencil case and I pull out my mother's bra. Sister Gertrude turned into the Incredible Hulk, let me tell you. She picked up my chubby butt in that desk and carried me all the way down to the principal's office. Called my parents. My mother, oh man, my mother was so upset because I picked a bra out of the dirty laundry. It was like an old ratty one. It wasn't even a good one. That's what she tells me afterwards. But, you know, growing up, so my dad's side of the family is Puerto Rican, and my mom's side were mutts, right? Polish, Irish, Italian, German, Swiss, everything. So discipline, which is sorely lacking these days, which let me put a pin in this for a second. This whole Antifa thing, we got so many emails. They were running their mouths. We're coming out there. We're going to show you who's boss. And first of all, a big shout out to all these riders, these incredible patriots that gave up time with their families to come out here and stand up for patriotism. Now, I know we're all disappointed that Antifa didn't show up. It's my fault. I leaked out on the internet that we were requiring permission slips for them to come. Sorry, guys, my bad. So, growing up, discipline, which is something that is sorely lacking these days, I got a lot of, but it was very different on my mom's side and my dad's side. So, my mom's side, if I cussed, let me tell you, I got a bar of ivory soap in my mouth. And that stuff gets stuck in your teeth. Like, that's in there for a while. My dad's side, abuelo would discipline you too. Like, my dad didn't even have to do anything. Hey, oh, coño, let me tell you something. I'm going to smack you in the corner where the security camera does not see me. That's how we were raised. There was tough love. Josh, can you hold this for 1 second? Anyone recognize this sound from growing up? Yeah. I got the belt once. And then after that, all my dad had to do was put his hand on his belt. Now, we didn't have belt buckles like you guys have here. Those things are going to be banned in Connecticut because those are going to be considered weapons of mass destruction. But we were taught respect. And I understand that a lot of you hate millennials, and I really hope, just as much as I hope we could change the idea that people hate law enforcement, I hope I could change your belief that all millennials suck, because only 90% of them do, and the other 10% I hired, and they're actually really good people, I promise. But I think that there is a misconception about them, but I can tell you all, I want you to take note of this. This is very important. I have identified the moment in society where it all started going downhill. It's when we put the save button on video games. So when I was growing up, we had Atari, and then we had Sega Genesis, and they were hand-me-downs because we were super poor. Like, we ate government peanut butter growing up. That's how poor we were. But my uncle got us a used video game system. And you had to work your butt off to get to level 14. And if you died, you had to start all over again. You earned what you were given. And then they put the save button on video games. You got to level 14, you died, you started again at level 14, and we started being lazy. That is the moment right there. And I think it's really important. So I worked in TV for about 10 years. I was a producer of news and special projects. I was working 80 to 100 hours a week on salary. It was a spectacular pickup line when I was in my 20s. Girls would be like, oh, I'm a teacher, what do you do? I'm like, oh, I'm a producer for NBC. They didn't know that I had to use food stamps if I wanted to take them out to dinner. But 80 to 100 hours a week, loved what I did at the time, and then I started seeing it all go downhill. And you all know, I already see some of you nodding, you know what I'm talking about in the media, right? The media has gone so far left. And we were taught how to position law enforcement in a negative light. And isn't that what's happening every single day in the media? But isn't that what's happening to us as conservatives? We are being painted in a negative light because we love our God, we love our country, we love our family, and we want a future for our kids that's better than the future that we even had for ourselves. How is that? Can anybody tell me how that is a bad thing, to want a country that is better for our kids than we had for ourselves? And so I took a buyout package. It was 2008, 2009, and I started a company called The Silent Partner Marketing. Now, the whole idea was that we would operate silently on behalf of our businesses that we worked with. We would design and execute their marketing strategy, soup to nuts. You wouldn't know it was us, you thought it was the business. Now, I was a very good storyteller. I knew how to market really well. I did not know how to run a business to save my life. So I spent the first couple of years messing up. I mean, like bad. I knew nothing about running a business. And then I started hiring people who were a lot smarter than me, which is always a good move. And as we grew, it was really important to me to give back. That's part of how I was raised. That's part of being a Christian, is that if you are blessed with these incredible gifts, you owe it to your faith, to your community, to your country to give back. And so we started a campaign called Behind the Uniforms. Now, I'm going to get to that in a second, but our company produces about 10,000 videos a year. We spend about $12 million a year on Facebook, Instagram, Google. Now, I see you guys cringing right now because most of you hate those platforms. And I understand, and I hate them too. But it's also how people are consuming media. And we have to understand that, because as conservatives, we're sitting around like, whoa, when's the next Facebook coming out? Right? We need the new conservative face. Guys, I'm going to be straight up with you. The next Facebook is not coming anytime soon. You can listen to everything that you want to hear because we're all in our own echo chambers. Let's be honest. I'm in my own echo chamber. I open up Facebook, I open up Instagram. I'm surrounded by conservative content. The truth is that these new platforms aren't coming anytime soon, regardless of what people say. And so we need to understand how to leverage them and how to use it to fight back. And so spending that much money and producing that much content, you learn a thing or two in business about how these platforms work and how they all operate. So we launched this campaign And we announced that we were going to donate $500,000 in services to tell the stories behind the uniforms for men and women who serve and protect our communities and our country. And the first video that we did got more than 3 million views in 24 hours. So I was able to get the Chiefs on Fox and Friends. So Ainsley Earnhardt, who I love. Any other Ainsley fan, like crazy Ainsley fans in here? All right, maybe like 2 of you. Thanks, guys. Way to back me. So Ainsley's interviewing the Chiefs and said, who made this video? And they talked about our company. Fox and Friends talking about us. Amazing, right? Yeah. Well, Antifa found out about it. Those guys who were so spineless that they couldn't show up today. But they're keyboard warriors, so what do? They flood you with fake reviews. Hundreds of fake 1-star reviews within hours, promising to shut us down for supporting pigs and killers and Nazis unless we killed our campaign. Now, guys, we're a small company, right? Especially at that point. So my management team is freaking out because they know that's the kind of thing that will put you out of business. They said, what are we going to do? I said, listen, there's really only one thing that we can do. And the room got quiet. They said, shut down the campaign. I said, no, we're going to double the donation and tell them all to kiss our American asses. Pardon the language, ladies. But that's not enough, right? You're going to war with keyboard warriors. We can't just run our mouths. No, we needed to destroy them. So I was blessed at that point to have about 70,000 followers on Facebook. So I instructed all of my staff to take the entire day, respond to the fake reviews, but get real aggressive, troll them right back, and then take screenshots of it and post it on my public figure page. Well, then we got 1,400 5-star reviews, and all of our followers started attacking the people who left the 1-star reviews, and that's how the West was won. And so things blew up. We doubled the donation. We ultimately founded the Whiskey Patriots. I'll get to that later on. And we launched this campaign called Behind the Uniform. So I'd like to give you a little video teaser of what that looks like.
I took my revolver out, I put it in my mouth, I prayed, I said, God, forgive me for what I'm about to do.
Imagine, you have hundreds of people trying to get out one door, and we're trying to make our way in through that door.
At that point in time, I felt the most intense pain that I've ever felt in my life.
He walked in my office, he just tried to jam the lock, and he said, I'm sorry, but I'm here to kill you today.
For 8 days, they kept me in a dungeon downstairs.
My heart stopped 8 times. Boy, I was sure trying to die, but I kept fighting it.
I mean, it was rivers of blood. I mean, it was truly a massacre.
We have a Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. We have a Drug Enforcement Administration. We have a Department of Homeland Security. Where's our counter-human trafficking agency?
I called out for help, and all my brothers were coming to help me.
I've always wanted to be an officer. Nothing's going to stop me.
It's so hard to explain to folks who haven't served what families go through.
That guilt that we carry on the shoulders of what we've put our families through, it eats at us.
My wife told me, she's like, that is what you were made to do.
We're fighting against all odds, but I believe that the community see that we are fighting in their favor and not just to be because we're wearing the uniform.
We can't do this without the help and the cooperation and the support of the community that we live in. The police need the support and cooperation of the community in order to be able to do our jobs effectively.
One of the guys that we interviewed, this guy named Ken Krause. Now, Ken is a crusty old vet. I love Ken to death. So Ken was the first Marine Guard hostage in the Iran crisis. Now, this was the prelude to the Iran crisis that everybody here knows about and heard about. Ken was taken hostage. He was tortured in a dungeon in Iran for 7 days. He was sentenced to die. He was being brought up to be executed when the Swedish Red Cross came in at the last minute and pulled him out. They had negotiated his release. Now, I'm going to share this with you because I think a lot of you will appreciate this. Ken once said to me, now, Ken, after he got out and he recovered, he became a police officer. He retired from Atlanta PD after, I believe, 23 years. And Ken just got a book deal, and he's experiencing some of those demons now as he writes his story. And Ken said to me, you know, I spent a lot of time in Facebook jail, Kyle. I said, I know you do, Ken. Ken puts up a lot of real aggressive conservative content. You want to know the last piece that got my boy Ken thrown in Facebook jail? It was a meme. It was a picture of a helicopter. And it said, put a commie in a helicopter, he'll fly for an hour. Push him out the door, he'll fly for a lifetime. Facebook jail. Unbelievable. We have been blessed to share the stories of some of the most incredible patriots in America. We have met the first guy in the door at the Pulse nightclub shooting, survivors of the Dallas 5 massacre. We have interviewed and become very close with the officers who actually responded to the Parkland shooting, the Sandy Hook massacre, Vegas, you name it, all of these huge incidents. You hear them in the news, right? And they only keep a long news cycle if it's, well, he shot an unarmed black man, or that officer broke the law. Now, the problem that we face is that the law doesn't matter. The left doesn't care about law and order. The left wants to control the court of public opinion. And the court of public opinion is now replacing the courts in America and making rulings based on feelings and not based on facts, not based on law and order. So I'm going to come back to that in a minute, but I think it's important to sort of bring you guys on some highs and lows through this, because we're going to see some sad stuff. I want to go through some happy stuff too. I know a lot of you came out here because you heard about the snowflake test. And I want to clear up some of the misconceptions about what the snowflake test is and is not. So first of all, what was it? It's our hiring process. People saw that we had a 30-foot bar in the office, 8-foot beanbag chairs, a caterer, a gym membership, you name it, super cool work environment, and they started applying to work for us, and they had no idea what we did as a company. They just saw all those nice benefits, and they figured, hey, I'm going to get 6 weeks paid vacation and $100,000 a year. Spoiler alert, you don't. And so they started applying, and we were going through interview after interview, and one of two things was going to happen. Either A, I was just going to stop hiring people and try and figure out how to do this whole robot thing, or B, I was going to end up punching people in the throat and going to jail because I was so done with this interview process. So finally I said, we need a vetting process. And so the snowflake test was born. 30 questions, short answer, essay style. I'm going to throw you through some of them right now. What does America mean to you? When was the last time you cried and why? How do you feel about police? You see someone stomping on an American flag, what happens next? What does faith mean to you? Here's a good one. I want an answer on this. I want a straight up answer. You're sitting in Starbucks having coffee. Someone walks in, hands you a gun, and says in 30 seconds someone's going to come in and start shooting. What happens next?
Shoot the guy that comes in.
Wrong, sir. Because real Americans don't drink Starbucks. It was a trick question. You guys see this? Freaking Starbucks shut down 8,000 locations for a day of diversity training to force feed employees videos about how biased law enforcement is. And where's the Kyle that works here? Kyle, we got to talk about the fact that you're serving Starbucks coffee over here at the Marriott later. I'm just kidding. These guys are amazing, but we do have to talk about that coffee thing. I'm a big fan of Battlegrounds Coffee. Shameless plug. Former Navy SEAL. Okay, so the snowflake test hits the mainstream media. $23 million in media exposure in 1 week. Fox and Friends First, Varney and Company, The Kennedy Show, Risk and Reward, The Adam Carolla Show, Milo, Louder with Crowder, you name it. 40,000 emails in 1 week, 10,000 job applications. We were not set up to handle 10,000. Guys, we weren't even set up to handle like 100 job applications. But we won. And so at that point, it hit at it was an amazing opportunity, but it also hit at a lousy time because we were in the process of flying back and forth from the People's Republic of Connecticut to Savannah, Georgia, where freedom still exists. And we had meetings with clients out there, God bless you. And so we're flying back and forth and back and forth. And I'm just fried. I'm totally exhausted. I'm going to share with you a little bit of an embarrassing story. So does anybody know Kennedy? She was a former MTV star. She's got the Kennedy Show now. She's beautiful. I had a super crush on her growing up. She's cute. It's the glasses, you know. So I end up doing her show, but I am exhausted. I am totally shot at this point. And so I'm in the green room and I'm waiting to film. And I'm standing there, I've got my back against the wall, and I'm just scrolling through my phone, trying to stay awake. I've got a few employees with me, and I see a hand come out, and there's a cup of coffee in front of me, and I hear a guy go, "You look like you're going to fall asleep, brother." And I look up, and it's John Stossel. John Stossel's like a super cool dude. So I have the coffee, I try and fuel up, but the caffeine doesn't kick in time, and then I get on set and I'm sitting across from Kennedy, and I'm like fanboying a little bit because of the whole crush thing, and it's still there even though I'm married with kids, but you know. But I'm half asleep, and we're getting ready for the segment, and I'm looking around. Now, we've been doing all these shows on real small sets. At this point on Fox Business and Fox News, the sets were all real small. I mean, we're talking like this big. And this particular studio that we're in, it's bigger than this whole room. And so I'm looking around out of it in that like half dream state, and I said, wow, Kennedy, I gotta tell you, you've got a really big set. And as soon as those words come out, I'm trying to grab them, right? I'm trying to pull them back in. And she looks at me and she's like, well, honey, I've got to tell you, I've never had anyone tell me that before. And before I could even say anything, they're like, we're live in 3, 2. And so the snowflake test was a success, but I don't think if my wife ever leaves me, Kennedy and I are ever going to work out. And so now I want to talk to you a little bit more about the Thin Blue Line, because after all of this exposure on Fox, I had the founder of this organization called Law Enforcement Today reached out to me. And he said, listen, brother, I see you doing all this pro-law enforcement stuff, and I see you talking about the cops on air, and if you ever need stats or data or information or support or anything like that, let me know, I can help. So I had my staff reach out, and we end up having a conversation, and I said, brother, what's your reach like of your platform? That's an important number in advertising. How many people do you reach? He said, how should I know? I said, I thought you own this platform called Law Enforcement Today. He goes, yeah, but I'm a cop. I have no idea. Okay, can I go take a look? He said, yeah. So he gives me access to the back end. I go in, I call him up. I said, you reach 20 million people a month. He goes, oh, is that good? yeah, that's really good. He goes, oh, okay. Should we do something with that? I said, yeah, we should do something with that. So flash forward about 6 months later, Eli, can you stand up for a second? My brother Eli Crane, former SEAL sniper. Eli, did you bring me anything? Did you bring me any breachers? That's okay, I won't hold it against you. So Eli, you probably recognize him from the show Shark Tank. His company turns 50 cal bullets into bottle openers. So Eli regularly appears on The Real Man Show with us. So we were up for a national award for The Real Man Show, and it's in Vegas. So it's myself, and I'm just like, I'm not a real man. I'm just a dude who likes to hang out with real men, right? Like, I'm about as mechanically inclined as a box of hair. It's not a good situation, which is why I hang out with people who are actually manly. Because if stuff ever goes down, like, I'm just going to take the gun and hand it to Josh or Eli or one of you guys, and we'll be good. So we're out in Vegas, and Eli flies out, and he's got these new products. He's got a 50 cal bottle opener, bottle breacher, a 30 millimeter, and a frag grenade. And they're all bottle openers. And they're all black, and they've got the Punisher logo on them. So we do our filming, and Eli says, all right, bring this back, and you guys could do your thing with it, do filming. I'm like, I don't know if I can, how do I get this back to Connecticut? And so basically we decided that if I ended up having to turn him in or whatever, no big deal, he'll just ship us out some new ones. So I've got these 3 things in a Pelican case. It's a small black case. It's got the Punisher logo on the front of them. We came in second place for the award, which was ridiculous. We should have come in first place, but we'll talk about that after. And that night they took us out. Now, how many of you are friends with Marines? Has anyone ever been drinking with a Marine before? It is not a good idea. Because they will just keep you going. It's like peer pressure to the extreme. So we go out, and Mike, the Marine, has me drinking, and I don't really drink, believe it or not. I have like 2 drinks a month. That's a lot for me. Well, we had a few cocktails that night, like too many. And we get to the airport at 4:30 a.m. the next morning. So I've got, Eli's already gone, right? He's home safe and sound, and I've got Mike the Marine. I've got this guy, Daniel, we call him Dragon. He's our creative director. He runs all of our cinematography. And me. So we get to the airport. We're all probably just stinking like alcohol. Now, it's probably worth mentioning that this was about a week after Mandalay Bay, so maybe everybody's on heightened alert. And I've got this Pelican case, and in it, I've got these Freedom Tools, bottle openers. I'm like, I'm not going to check it. I'm just going to carry it on. It's okay, don't judge me. I decided I would declare it to TSA, right? So we get up there, we're TSA pre-check because I fly a lot. Mike the Marine goes through, no problems, leaves a trail of vodka smell behind him. Daniel goes through, no problems. And I said to the TSA agent, I said, ma'am, I don't know if I can bring this through or not, so I'd like to show you what's in it. She goes, sir, put it through the x-ray. I'm like, yeah, ma'am, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but I'd really like to show you what's in this case because I'm not looking for any trouble. She goes, I said, put it through the x-ray. I said, yeah, but ma'am, I'd like to just open it up because if I have to surrender this, it's no big deal. I don't know. She goes, I said, put it through the x-ray. Okay. So I put my bag through the x-ray, put the Pelican case through the x-ray, beep, 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 hit on my bag. So the guy pulls my bag aside, and I'm wearing my thin blue line hat, and he goes through, and I left a pocket knife in the bag, which apparently it's not that big of a deal. The guy said, oh, listen, you can't really mail this back because the post office isn't open yet. I said, listen, brother, just take it. He goes, we confiscate 500 of these a day. It's no big deal. Now, we're having a very friendly conversation. In the meantime, all these TSA agents are running behind him, and I'm not thinking anything of it. And then all these state troopers are running behind him. And then we see the red flashing thing that goes off when they shut down a terminal. And I look over and I see the look on the woman's face. I mean, just pure horror. And then I see, obviously, the x-ray where you see a 30 millimeter, a 50 cal, and a frag grenade on the x-ray. And the TSA agent who, I'm thinking he and I are boys at this point. We're not. He said, what is that? I said, oh, brother, that's mine. He goes, you got to be kidding me. I said, I know what it looks like, but they're just bottle openers. And I tried to tell her. He goes, don't worry, brother, I'll take care of this. 5 minutes later, the State Police Explosives team has this Pelican case, and they're walking over. Is this yours? Yes, officer, it is. He says, and I understand that this is safe to open. I said, yes, officer, it is. And he sees my thin blue line hat. He goes, are you a cop? I said, I'm not. Most of my friends and family are, but I wouldn't bother calling any of them right now because they're going to deny knowing me at this point. So he says, I'm going to need your boarding pass. So now I'm in a little bit of a meltdown mode, as I'm sure you can understand. We have the State Police Explosives team. I've shut down an entire terminal, so I'm dumping out my bag, throwing stuff all over the place, desperately trying to find my boarding pass. It's in my hand. I don't even realize it's in my hand. So I look over. I figure, you know what? I'm going to make eye contact with my boy, the Marine. And as soon as I do, he's going to sort of ground me, bring me down. I'll be okay. And I look over, and he's like, bro, I'm filming the whole thing. I got this. Real big help that guy was. So the guy opens it up, and he takes it apart, and he's taking photos of it, and he's taking photos of the x-ray, and he's sort of smiling. And I said, are those photos for Facebook? He goes, they're for the FBI report. And so long story short, he ends up confiscating the frag grenade, and he gives me back the 50 cal and the 30 millimeter. And I said, how much trouble am I in? And he said, well, technically, I don't think you broke any laws. I said, well, that's good. He said, no, it's not good because this is TSA, and the law and TSA, they're not really the same thing. I said, well, what are we looking at here? He goes, well, you're probably going to have to appear back here in court in Vegas. I'm like, Vegas? He goes, yeah, you're facing about a $5,000 fine. I'm like, what? He goes, you have TSA pre-check? I said, I do. He goes, yeah, not anymore, you don't. So he hands me back the 50 millimeter, the 50 cal and the 30 millimeter, and he says, all right, you're all set with that. We'll be in touch. And I'm looking at, anyone ever see a 30 millimeter? These things are huge. And it's got a sharp pointed end. I said, I can bring this thing on the plane? He goes, yeah. I said, I can stab somebody in the neck with this. He goes, really? Really? You want to? I said, forget it. I'm just kidding. I'm going to go get on that plane. So, of course, we go to get on the plane, and my creative director looks at the Marine. He goes, hey, remember that time my boss tried to smuggle a pocket knife and a hand grenade onto an airplane? So I'm never going to live that down. So 2 days later, the founder of Law Enforcement Today calls me up, and he says, this relationship is going great. We'd like to make you our national spokesman. And I said, there's sort of an FBI report out there right now that I think we have to have a conversation about. So I told him the story, and he was fine with it. But I said, why would you tap me as your national spokesman? I think you missed the part where I'm not a cop. And he starts laughing. I said, what's so funny about that? Are you playing a joke on me? He goes, no, that's exactly why we want you to be our spokesman. I said, I don't follow you, brother. He goes, you can do one thing that we can't do. I said, what's that? He goes, you can run your mouth and there's no police department in America that can fire you. Touché. Let's talk about the thin blue line. Morale in law enforcement has hit an all-time low. They feel alone, they feel neglected. They do it because, listen, Trump nailed it when he talked about the silent majority, right? We're all sitting here right now silent. The left does an unbelievable job of tooting their own horn, rallying their people, towing the party line. Listen, when Bernie Sanders got tossed in 2016, all of the people that said never Clinton, what did they do? Well, they didn't want to suicide themselves accidentally, and so they came over to Hillary Clinton's side. They towed the party line. And yet we had an entire party that, despite the fact that we had the Supreme Court on the line, said, oh, it's Trump, never Trump. Trump's a bad guy. We forget that there's a much bigger picture here, that there is something that is so much bigger than us, and that's our country. We are losing our country because we as a party are divided among our own ranks. Listen, I love President Trump to death, but sometimes I look at him on Twitter, I'm like, shut up already. Right, you're not helping yourself. We call him Daddy T in our house. So my daughter, we're in church on Sunday. This is 6 months before the election. She's not even 2 years old. And the priest, Catholic Mass, he's giving a big homily. It's like we're Southern Baptist all of a sudden. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, what are we going to do? And he was talking about, like, I don't know, a new restaurant in town opening up or something. And he pauses for effect. And at the top of her lungs, my daughter screams out, "Make America great again!" And in that moment, we knew how everybody was voting in that church, one way or another. You should have seen the look on my mother-in-law's face. It was priceless. The court of public opinion, like I said, now controls the court of law. The war on law enforcement isn't just a physical one, though. It's a legal one. We are seeing attack after attack on law enforcement because we've lost respect in this country. We have lost respect for adults. We've lost respect for our elders. We have lost respect for rules and law and the Constitution. We think, thanks to the left, that if we don't like a law, we just get rid of it, or we ignore it, or we say the hell with it, we can do better without it. How do we get to this point? Save button on video games, I'm telling you. I think that's a big part of it. But we have lost respect. Look at what's happening in New York right now. Okay, it's buckets of water today, right? It's buckets of acid tomorrow. Concrete mix, who knows? The bigger problem here is respect. And you have an idiot mayor who's standing there and doesn't say a word about it until the media coverage is so astonishing that he has no choice. In the meantime, you have the 9/11 memorial for first responders being dedicated, and you have him and this idiot governor blows off the memorial service so that one of them could go ziplining and the other one could just hang out and chill for the day. That's a huge problem. It is a lack. 100% it is assault on police officers. And let me tell you something. At Law Enforcement Today, we put up an article 2 weeks ago about a proposal that would make any assault on law enforcement a federal crime. Let me explain to you what a big problem we have, though. Within 2 hours of putting up that article, our traffic on Facebook plummeted 95%. Facebook throttled our reach because of that article for 3 days. They send one hell of a message about our country and about where they stand on the thin blue line, right? And so we have, in the state of Connecticut, I hate my states. I don't even admit that I'm from Connecticut usually, unless it's at something like this. People are like, where are you from? I'm like, I travel a lot across the country. And I love Texas. And now Arizona because you have amazing belt buckles and some spectacular boots too. Some great boots. So in Connecticut, they tried to pass legislation in the middle of the night. Now there's a ruling that was made by the Supreme Court, and I'm going to break this down real simple. The ruling says, let's say you're an officer and you have to make a decision, a life or death decision, to take the life of someone who is coming at you. Maybe someone points a gun at you, and you have no choice but to take the life of that person who pointed the gun at you. Well, the Supreme Court ruling said, if all of the information at the time, you made the best decision that you could have possibly made, and you had to take the life of that suspect, you're okay. It's fine. You were justified. Well, what the state of Connecticut tried to do in the middle of the night was pass legislation that said, well, if information comes out later on that says that that was actually a black painted BB gun, and it wasn't a gun, and your life wasn't threatened, and you killed him, you could be held criminally responsible for that. I mean, are you kidding me right now? We're now asking our law enforcement officers to become seers of the future? It is a full-blown attack. The attack on law enforcement, ladies and gentlemen, isn't just buckets of water. It is our lawmakers pandering for votes from the left from people who probably shouldn't even be in this country to begin with because they don't want to lose their seat. That is what's happening, and that is what's costing the life of our officers. And now you have red flag legislation being proposed that's going to lead to more dead cops. And I understand that this is a controversial subject on both sides. But frankly, I don't really give a damn. We're going to talk about it anyway. Because here's the problem. I have a lot of friends who are in law enforcement, who are combat veterans, who have post-traumatic stress. Because guess what? You don't go do a couple tours overseas, have to kill a bunch of people, have to lose your friends, and not feel that in some way, shape, or form. You don't watch your brothers and sisters in law enforcement get attacked, save little kids, or lose 2-year-olds in pool drownings and not hold on to that in some way, shape, or form in the form of post-traumatic stress. And you're going to tell me that a simple report can now be filed that especially in liberal states like Connecticut, they could come in and say, we're going to take your guns because you're mentally unstable. What happened to our constitutional rights? What happened to at least having legitimate conversations based on passing legislation focused on keeping people safe that is logical and reasonable and still protects our rights? We're not doing that anymore. We are passing knee-jerk legislation that makes people feel good and will do nothing to save lives. That's what happened in Connecticut after the Sandy Hook shootings. We passed legislation in the middle of the night to ban AR-15s made after a certain date. That is not going to save a single life. We also passed legislation that puts a limit on magazines of 10 rounds. Okay, cool, but there's no limit on the number of magazines I can carry. And for anyone in here who's a halfway decent shooter, you can swap out a magazine in about 1.7 seconds, right? So what have we done? Nothing. We have accomplished nothing. They passed it so fast that the state police union had to step up and say, hey, you forgot that we all carry 15-round magazines, and so now you just made all of our weapons illegal, and they had to go back to the drawing board. It shows you how our Constitution was created in a way, our legislative system was created in a way that was supposed to prevent this. It was supposed to be a slow-rolling process so that we weren't passing legislation based on emotion. Being forced to enforce legislation now that is a direct violation of their oath. Sanctuary cities. You are now preventing law enforcement officers from cooperating with federal officers and with federal agencies. Why? Because some Democrat decided that he was probably going to get more votes by making your city a sanctuary city? You show me one American life that is going to be made better by sanctuary cities. You can't do it. Instead, we're pumping taxpayer money into sanctuary cities. We have left-leaning judges, full-blown liberal judges, who are preventing the Trump administration from drying up federal funds to states that are blatantly violating the Constitution. And we as society tend to get angry with law enforcement for this, right? I feel your pain on it. You get the knock on the door, we're here to take your guns. We are now passing legislation that is creating a divide between the very people that silently stand up for and fight for law enforcement and law enforcement officers who are now put in a position where they have to decide between, am I going to stand up for the Constitution and the oath that I took? Am I going to enforce laws that are arguably unconstitutional? We just haven't declared that they're unconstitutional yet because they haven't made it to the Supreme Court and been challenged yet. Or do I throw away the ability to provide for my family and to keep my community safe? But we're getting mad at cops for that. We're getting mad at them for the divide that we have between federal and local and state law enforcement. It's all part of the bigger picture here. And if you're not seeing that, you got to wake up. We are creating a divide between those of us who love those who serve and protect and those who serve and protect, and putting them in a really unfair position. I want to share with you a prediction that I made. So I did an episode of Risk and Reward on Fox Business. Now, the way that this typically works is that Fox will call you up. They'll have a topic they want you to talk about. You'll have a conversation with the producer. You'll go over talking points. And then you'll agree on everything. They send a car. They pick you up. They bring you down. So we're in that position. I'm doing a piece on Dick's Sporting. I'm sorry. It was before Dick's. I was doing a piece on the NRA and all of the boycotts. All these companies that said, we're done with the NRA. We're going to boycott them. So I'm sitting there on set. We're about a minute before we go live. And Deirdre Bolton, who's the anchor, says, hey, did you see what just happened with Dick's? I said, what just happened with Dick's? She goes, well, they decided that they're going to not sell guns to people under the age of 21, and they're going to stop selling assault-style rifles. I was like, when did that happen? She goes, about 2 minutes ago. I said, oh. She goes, let's talk about that instead. I'm like, okay, we can talk about that. I'm just going to talk about it from a marketing perspective. So I'm feeling okay. I'm comfortable, even though we just totally blew out of water the entire plan. And right before we go on air, she goes, oh, this is going to be such a fun little debate. I'm like, debate? This is Fox Business. Like, I thought we were on the same team here. So the point that she brought up was she played a clip from Judge Napolitano. And he said, in certain states, the age of discrimination is not 40 and older. It's any age. And so saying that even though federally you don't have to be 21 to buy a gun, they're requiring it. He argued that in certain states like New Jersey, that's age discrimination. And I said, listen, I understand that. But first of all, the idea that we're going to get all these 18-year-olds who are so angry that they're going to get together and have a class action lawsuit, I think is kind of crazy. But even if that happened, it's going to take 2 years to play out in the courts. Easily 2 years. Here's what's not going to happen. The court of public opinion. The free market. The free market determines everything. And so Dick's was making a calculated business decision that they would have the support of so many soccer moms who needed to buy cleats for their kids who hate guns that it would make up for the loss of business on the gun side of things. Flash forward 6 months. Dick's, toilet business dropped substantially. Look what just happened with Walmart, though. Now, listen, let's be clear. When I heard that Walmart was rolling out this whole thing about open carry, at first, as a gun guy, I was ripped. And then the second emotion that hit me, I never open carry because I sort of like the element of surprise. But this is what the left does so well. First of all, Democrats have realized that they don't need Congress to pass gun control because they have corporate America. They have Hollywood. They have the media. You don't need, this is no longer a question of freedom of speech with censorship, of the Second Amendment. Private corporations can do what they want. The left is doing an amazing job of moving the goalpost. And I'm gonna touch on another hot topic here for a second, abortion. I'm pro-life, always have been. Most of my friends, pro-life. Thank you. Here's what's happening though. So now you have states, as was mentioned earlier, where you have, I believe it was North Virginia, where the governor came out and is essentially calling for murder. We're talking about abortion after a baby is born. And he said, well, you know, ladies and gentlemen, if that baby was going to be aborted and it was ineffective and they did not, after that child comes out of the womb, the parents and the doctor should be allowed to decide to abort that child. Are you kidding me? This is happening in America? We're killing babies out of the womb in America, and here's what scares the hell out of me. People that I know that have always been pro-life have said, well, listen, I understand before 21 weeks, but this is ridiculous. Whoa, 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 whoa. We're moving the goalpost. The devil is at work here, where we have people that were adamantly against it, but now they're negotiating on their own values because we think that we have to sacrifice who we are as men and women to appease what is now the new norm in society. We've lost our way. We have normalized things that weren't normal, and it's just starting. I think about my daughters, my 3 daughters, and what the country is going to look like in 20 years. If we continue down this path and we sit here and we keep our mouths shut, is anyone else terrified by that? Because I sure am. There's a lot that you don't know is happening. Hollywood is force-feeding everything down our throats. So, don't judge me for this. My wife and I used to watch Grey's Anatomy, okay? Guilty pleasure. I wasn't drinking Cosmos while we watched it. I was drinking bourbon. At least that's manly. And we stopped when there was an episode where a poor, unarmed black child was shot and killed by a police officer who was obviously racist, even though in the very context of this show, he wasn't. And the only person who would have been able to save the life of this kid before he died, because he was just shot at this point, was a transgender surgeon. I mean, how many liberal issues can we roll into every single episode of every show on TV right now? But it's normal. Listen, you know what I want to do? I want to change the whole cruel and unusual punishment thing. Because what is cruel, right? Like, cruel is just sort of arbitrary. I mean, some people argue that waterboarding is cruel. I don't think that's really cruel. I think that helps keep America safe. And unusual just means we don't do it often enough. So if we're going to go ahead and move the goalposts and change the law, can we start torturing Antifa? That's probably why they're not here tonight, because they knew that I was going to call for waterboarding them. I would do it with whiskey, though. Hollywood is on overload. Facebook and Instagram. Bottle breacher. 50 cal bullets that are bottle openers. Ads being shut down. For what? They're bottle openers. Why? Because Facebook decided that you aren't safe because you are going to be triggered by the sight of a bullet that's been turned into a bottle. You know, we had ads shut down because we used the word you in the ads. And when we contacted our Facebook rep, I said, why was this ad shut down? He said, well, you used the word you in it. I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, that sets people apart and makes them feel excluded or like you're making fun of them. I said, the word you is getting our ad shut down? He said, this is our policy. I said, you people are out of your minds. There are Facebook trigger words. I find myself, when I write for law enforcement today now, I use the words undocumented migrant because I have no choice. Because if we, in an article, use the words illegal alien or illegal immigrant, Facebook shuts down our reach. And we get slammed left and right, and I get it. I understand why people are angry about that. You know what? I'm angry too, and you know what? You need to be angry about that. But the only way that we have to continue to advance the narrative of support for law enforcement, support for our constitutional values, is to pander and change the language that we're using. That's disgusting. YouTube demonetizing all content regarding guns or ammo or anything big and scary or patriotic. The word patriot, the big reason that we ultimately merged the Whiskey Patriots with law enforcement today was the word patriot was getting flagged as a racist term. The word patriot. Now, I don't really know how the New England Patriots get away with it. That's a whole different story. Google is now censoring content and burying conservative content. 2 weeks ago, Google started systematically shutting down the advertising accounts of companies all across America that do ancillary work in the firearms industry. Holsters, weapon-mounted lights, ballistic vests for cops. We are shutting down ad accounts for products that keep our law enforcement officers safe because Google has decided that if Congress won't pass gun control, they're going to do whatever the hell they want. You need to be mad. You need to understand what's happening. And I understand that this doesn't seem to touch most of you, right? It touches us because we work in advertising and we work in marketing and we have to figure out ways around it. We work in law enforcement, so we see the impact. But this is impacting you because we are moving the goalposts and we are leading to more dead officers. Think about the number that was given earlier. 1 million illegal immigrants are going to come into America this year. 1 million. You know how many sworn law enforcement officers we have in America? About 850,000. Are you mad? because I am. Mass reports by trolls shut down pages on LinkedIn and Twitter. You have middle of the night legislation. And so we decided to have a little bit of fun. I told you a little bit about the Real Man Show. What is it? Well, we decided to use social influence to fight back. Here's the official story with how it went. Mike the Marine and I are drinking whiskey one night because we're Americans and that's what we do. And we're talking about the toxicity of manliness, right? You can't be a real man. Manliness is chauvinistic somehow. Now, Mike and I are both married with kids. To us, being a real man is having faith, respect, honor, integrity, dignity, standing up for what's right, doing the right thing, protecting women, opening the doors for women. I mean, basic chivalry, but that's not acceptable anymore. So he said, what are we going to do? Because we have whiskey. And I said, let's do a show. And he said, what are we going to call it? I said, The Real Man Show. He said, like Jimmy Kimmel Show? I said, no, that was the Man Show, but he wasn't a real man anyway. Jimmy, I'll take you on directly on this. So we decided that we would go out, do man stuff, and then we would get to write it off on our taxes, and we would have an excuse with our wives to go on man trips. Well, the first video that we did got 250,000 hits, and we were like, oh, we're on to something. I'm going to give you a little taste of what it looks like.
Long ago, in a far-off land, men were admired for their strength. But somewhere along the lines, things changed. Manliness became toxic. Boys were told they could no longer be boys. Enough is enough. You can't fight the friction! Who are the unlikely saviors of manliness? A Marine and a whiskey patriot with a band of brothers. Together, they envision a future of trucks and ATVs, lumberjacks and helicopters, and all kinds of toys. You can't fight the friction! A country where manliness is an art and chivalry is appreciated and honored. A show where men are revered and businesses are highlighted and hard work is what earns you success. Welcome to The Real Man Show. Welcome to America.
Resurrect the art of manliness. So Josh, who's hiding over here, Josh has been in a couple episodes, Eli has. We've done everything from wild boar hunting out of choppers in Texas in the middle of the night to sniper shooting to baking man cakes and making man pizza and doing rifle training up at Sig Sauer and you name it. But here's what's important, and this is what I need you to understand, is that we as conservatives are so bad at marketing. So bad. This is going to haunt me. The average age in this room, not exactly 30 years old right now. Right? And I love you all tremendously, and I'm incredibly grateful that you're here. But where are the young conservatives? What are we doing? Watching Netflix, which is now a big Obama, Valerie Jarrett production. But I mean, the left has made being a leftist cool. Like, they have Stephen King. Man, they have Bruce Springsteen. They got The Boss. Who did we get? Me? God help us all. And so we need to make being a conservative cool again. And so this is one drop in the bucket for how we're doing it. We have law enforcement officers. We have veterans in every single episode. Josh, I'm going to hit that button. But here's what we actually do with it. And this is what the left is so good at. The left understands the digital marketplace. The left understands how to leverage social media influencers and data and analytics. And the right, the conservatives, we send you a mailer that says, vote for me. And then we get real excited because we have a cool lawn sign that we gave to our neighbor. Like, they're putting out stuff on Netflix and we're like, yo, robocalls, that's the new thing. We're going to blow up people's cell phones. What? So what we do is we extract the data from these videos. And then we run marketing campaigns to people who watched the video 50% to completion, who are conservative males, who are also in law enforcement or veterans, who are 35 to 54 years old, who have interests including guns, ammo, the NRA, who in this particular ad campaign are domestic truck owners. You can do all of this stuff. We as conservatives don't realize it because we are stuck being stodgy and old in our marketing campaigns. We have been asked to consult for campaigns across the country from politicians who will hear all of this out and then they're like, yeah, but you know what we're gonna do? TV. TV? Like, okay, so years ago, remember Blockbuster? Which is out of business, right? So Blockbuster had the opportunity to acquire Netflix for $25 million. Netflix is now valued at something like $42 billion. They had the opportunity to acquire it for $25 million, and they hired a consulting firm to do some market research, and that consulting firm turned around and said, don't do it. And they said, why not? And they said, well, we talked to your customers, and you know what your customers said? They said they like the chance they're gonna run into their neighbor on a Friday night. You know what I like the chance of on a Friday night? Being able to sit around in boxers with a Natty Light beer while watching whatever I want to watch and hitting pause so I can go get another cheap beer. Because the market has shifted, and it continues to shift, and if we as conservatives don't at least understand enough that we need to hire people who get this stuff, it's going to shift out from under us and we're going to lose it. We're going to lose it all. So how do we fight back? It's so overwhelming. I've presented you with a little bit of information today, a little bit about what's happening in Hollywood and in the mainstream media and Google and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and LinkedIn. MySpace is not actually dead, it's coming back, but it's owned by Justin Timberlake apparently, who starred in the Facebook movie, which is very ironic. How do we fight back? Well, first of all, guys, open your mouth. Open your mouth. We need to stop being the silent majority, because we're very quickly becoming the minority. And I'm not talking about the color of your skin, your socioeconomic background, your ethnicity. Guess what? Law enforcement doesn't know race or sex or gender or color or anything like that. Neither do we as conservatives. But what you see in the media and what the media tells you, totally different story. Go back to that slide. Open your wallet. My God, Democrats are good at getting money out of people, and we as conservatives were like, oh, you gotta donate how much? How much is the ticket to see that jerk from Connecticut? 30, I'm out. Open your wallets, people, and understand that we are fighting a war in so many ways. We're fighting a war for the soul of America. We're fighting a war for our own souls from a spiritual warfare perspective, and we're sitting around wondering where Blockbuster went. Open your mouth, open your wallet, understand the enemy that is in front of you, because the enemy is all around you. Share, share, share. When you see conservative content, when you see pro-law enforcement content on social media, you can actually game the algorithm. So when you see these stories, if you hit that share button, Facebook says, oh wow, this got a whole bunch of shares very quickly. We're going to serve it up to more people. Stop being silent. You owe it to your family, to your children, to your grandchildren, to your country to open your damn mouths and stop being so silent. Find your tribe. Buy from your people. You will never see me in a Starbucks. You will never see me in a Ben & Jerry's. And that makes me sad because I really like that chocolate peanut butter core ice cream. But they are a socialist company. You will not see me shop there. You know who will see me shop there? Otterbox. Because the family that owns Otterbox is a bunch of Christian conservatives who the sons then started a company called Angel Armor. They didn't need to, but they started it because they wanted to save cops' lives, and they make ballistic vests. That is the kind of company we need to look for. That is the kind of company we should be spending our money on. We're going to keep going to Walmart because it's convenient, because it's cheap. Are we really going to sell out our souls to save 50 cents on a purchase? And I want to share with you one other quick video. We launched this platform called LET Unity because we were losing control of content, and we wanted to tell the stories of those who serve and protect our communities and our country. We wanted to share the stories of patriotic Americans. And so all the money that comes in from memberships with LET Unity, 100% of it goes back into telling these stories.
America is the greatest country on earth, and there's a growing number of us who are sick of being told otherwise. We are mothers and fathers, sons and daughters, farmers, cops, teachers, veterans, tradesmen. We are patriots. We want to provide for our families and pass down a legacy to our children. Yet somehow we've become divided. Civil discourse is dead. Social media censors us. God has been kicked out of society, and overpaid celebrities and the media tell us what to think. But many Americans are looking to find that common ground again. We support our police, are proud of our veterans, and are open to hearing about opinions that may be different from our own. It's time for us to unite. We are a community where your average American can connect with our brothers and sisters, patriotic companies, and thought leaders. It's a home where you can learn about incredible people and remarkable organizations doing inspiring things and touching lives. It's a family that wants to change things for the better, put service above self, and help our neighbors. And it's a movement that's about to spread. We are your neighbors. We chat with you on the sidelines of our kids' games. We don't see age, sex, or color. Some of us are protectors. Some of us are supporters. All of us are patriots. We are men and women of integrity, character, community, family, unity. We will stand together. We will stand strong. And we will declare this is our country. This is our America. Today, we rise.
First, before I wrap up, I want to give a big shout out to the party that put this together. First of all, it took a lot of courage to have a guy who ticked off half of America come out here and speak in front of you all. So a big shout out to them. A big shout out to the hotel for hosting this. A big shout out to all the incredible companies that are out there putting their money where their mouth is, opening their wallets to try and give a voice to us, to all of us. To the men and women in this room who are running for office to try and give that voice back to the people. To our Gold Star families who made a sacrifice that we can never pay them back for, that we can never replace. Open your hearts, open your wallets, get off your butts. If you can't donate money, donate time. Again, we had a group of riders out there who gave up time with their family to be here to keep us safe in the event that things went south. And so I'm going to ask you all as we wrap up to just bow your head for a moment in prayer. Loving God, we commend to your gracious care and keeping all the men and women in law enforcement in our neighborhoods, cities, and on our highways. Defend them day by day with your heavenly grace. Protect their families, strengthen them in their trials. Give them the courage to face the perils which beset them, and grant them a sense of your abiding presence wherever they may be. Lord, you tell us in John 10:10 that the thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. In Peter 5:8, you remind us to be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walks about, seeking whom may devour. Lord, we ask you to keep our families safe, to bless our loved ones, to give us all a voice, and to remind us that we have a duty and an obligation to stand up, to fight. And I ask you to give us the knowledge of discernment, to know that we are in a war for our souls, we're in a war for our country, we're in a war for those who keep us safe. Lord, please protect our families, our country. We ask all this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. I love you all. God bless you all. God bless America. Thank you.